Matt Hancock, you've announced a £200 million cash boost for cancer screening. Where's the money coming from?
This is new money that's come into the Treasury. The economy.
From the magic money tree?
No, from the strong economy. We have record numbers of people in work. That means there's record numbers of people paying income tax. It means that there is headroom in the Treasury, and they've been able to find an extra £200 million for 300 scanners to go in hospitals and surgeries right around the country. And it's all part of getting ahead of early diagnosis of cancer. This country is very good at treating cancer once it's spotted, one of the best countries in the world. But we don't spot it early enough, and we need more diagnostics equipment so that when people worry that they might have cancer, they can get those tests quickly. So with 300 new scanners.
Is it a recognition that after years of cutting the medical equipment budgets, that those cuts might have gone too far?
Well, there haven't been cuts to the NHS. The money has increased year on year.
What about the equipment budget, though?
Well, the money has increased year on year overall, and we have had new equipment, but we need more. And one of the reasons here is that we are getting more people referring to diagnosis. I think this is a very good thing. For instance, Stephen Fry recently bravely talked about his cancer, and that led to a big leap in the number of men of a certain age who went and got themselves tested, and that meant we needed more diagnostics. So we're actually looking at record numbers of scans and wanting to do record numbers of scans, and the blockage in the system has been not having enough scanning machines, and of course the radiographers needed to operate them. And today we can announce that money, all part of trying to make sure that we have the best cancer survival that we possibly can. It's been increasing in recent years. It's at the cancer survival overall is the best it's ever been in British history, but obviously I want it to go further.
Is this an electioneering announcement?
No, it's an announcement because we care about the NHS. You know, I've been health secretary for 15 months now. Over that time, I've been able to make various announcements of improvements. This is the latest one. I care deeply about the NHS being as good as it possibly can be. So if I can get money from the Treasury, and the Treasury can afford it because the economy is going well, then that's great news.
Well, it's a rare thing to be talking about something that isn't Brexit, but Brexit is dominating a lot of work across government, including in your department. The spending watchdog today said with 5 weeks to go until October the 31st, there is still, quote, a significant amount of work to do to prepare for a no-deal exit. And particularly in your department, the chair of the Public Accounts Committee said that your department has no idea whether social care providers are ready. They're still not certain whether all the freight capacity that the government needs will be in place on time. It's pretty worrying, isn't it?
No, we have plans for all of the areas where there's still work to do. I thought it was a good report from the National Audit Office. It complemented the amount of work that's been done, and especially the engagement with the pharmaceutical industry, with people who provide services, both in social care and in the NHS. There's a huge amount of work that has been done. Of course, with 5 weeks to go, there's still more work that does need to be completed.
But you're going to be ready?
Completed, yes.
To leave without a deal?
Yes, if necessary. We have all of the plans in place in the areas where further work is needed. So in a way, it's very helpful to have an audit at this point, because in all the areas where they said there's more that's needed, we've got a plan. But I don't want to leave without a deal. I very strongly want to leave with a deal, and I think that we can deliver that. But it's also responsible to prepare and make sure we're ready, whatever the Brexit scenario.
Can you give an absolute guarantee that no one will die because of a no-deal Brexit?
Well, what I can guarantee is that we are doing all that is necessary to ensure that people will be able to get their drugs on time. I've been asked this question.
You can't guarantee that people won't die.
Well, I've been asked this question many, many times over the last few months. And the reason that I put it that way is because in the health service, 1.4 million people, it's a huge organisation. Health is a risky area. We do
so is no
our
deal
very
really
best.
worth it then? That risk, taking that risk.
No, because our plans are in place. We have full plans in place to ensure that there is the unhindered supply of medicines. But there are shortages in the supply of individual medicines all the time. Over the summer, you might have seen that we had a shortage of the supply of HRT medicines because there was a problem at a plant in Germany. There was a shortage of EpiPens a few months before that. So the thing is that of the approximately 12,300 medicines that are available on prescription in the UK, those supply chains are complicated. Brexit or no Brexit, there are always issues around supply, and we have a whole team in the department, even in normal times, constantly working on these issues of supply. That's why I choose my language carefully, but nevertheless, we have plans in place to ensure that we have that unhindered supply, even in the event of a no-deal Brexit.
I mean, obviously, you hope to get a deal. You hope the Prime Minister will get a deal. It's being reported tonight that the outlines of such a deal will be put to the European Union after the Conservative Party conference. Why not now? If you've got those plans sketched out, come out with it.
Well, because there's an awful lot of work that's needed to work out where the exact, what's called the landing zone in the sort of discussions, where that is. You know, the discussions that the Prime Minister is having with his opposite numbers in capitals around Europe, and of course with the Commission, with the technical negotiations that are ongoing. Steve Barclay was in Brussels today, more technical work. We've got to make sure that that work is done right so that we can find the agreement for a deal. But let's just step back a sec, OK? A few months ago, whenever anybody said we need a different withdrawal agreement because this one's been chucked out by the Commons 3 times, the response to that was, you'll never get them to reopen it. When I was running to be Prime Minister, I said we needed to change the withdrawal agreement. And I had people having a go at me saying, it'll never happen. Well, nobody's saying that now.
So a deal's more likely than no deal, is it now, in your view?
Well, I think there is a rising chance of a deal, even with the noise.
Still a slim chance, though.
I think there's a rising chance, even with
a rising
the noise
slim chance
in Westminster. And the reason for that is because it's in everybody's interest to get a deal. That is the best way to deliver on the result of the referendum. It is far better than no deal. We've got to get Brexit done. And the best way to do that is with a deal. And it's in the interest of the EU side that we leave with a deal rather than the risk of no deal, which is damaging to them too.
We're speaking at the end of a very torrid week in Parliament where your prorogation, or unlawful prorogation, was overturned and MPs returned. There's some appalling scenes in the Commons. Amber Rudd, your former cabinet colleague, said that the Prime Minister was inciting violence. Is she right?
I don't think she's right. I like Amber, and I've worked very closely with her over a long time, but I don't think she's right on this one. And the reason is that, you know, the language that's been used in politics over the last few years has undoubtedly got more aggressive, and I don't really like that tone. I always try to use a reasonable tone, and I think that politics should be about finding solutions and bringing people together. Think about, you know, what we're doing on the NHS, for instance. This isn't more cancer scanners isn't a party political issue. It's good for the country, and I like that sort of politics.
So have you told the Prime Minister that? Because when you endorsed him, you said you'd hold him to his pledge of being a one-nation Conservative.
Yes.
Give us one example where you've done that in private with him in the last few days or weeks.
The fact that we're putting more money into the NHS is absolutely at the core of delivering for the priorities of the country.
I'm talking about on this issue of Brexit. Have you had a word with him and said, you know, just, mate, turn it down?
Well, on this issue of Brexit and the particular language, one of the big issues that people are complaining about is the description of the Act of Parliament passed by a couple of weeks ago,
Hilary Benn.
The Hilary Benn Act, that says that that essentially removes a load of negotiating power from the government, and it surrenders that negotiating power. So it is just a matter of fact that that bill surrenders that negotiating power, Of course it's okay to call it a surrender act. That's not even a metaphor. It's literal. It's
But it turns it
reasonable.
into a battle, doesn't it? And you've said you don't like that kind of attitude. And what I asked you was whether you had said to the Prime Minister that you were concerned about his language and his rhetoric.
No, because
Have you said that?
No, because I think that the use of the term surrender act is perfectly reasonable to describe a bill that surrenders some of our negotiating
And
power.
to dismiss the fears of female MPs for their safety, to dismiss them as humbug, are you happy with that?
Well, I don't think that's what he was doing.
Well, he did absolutely do that. The Labour MP, Paula Sheriff, set out her concerns about her safety, about other colleagues' safety, and he said that's humbug.
But she also was setting out this challenge to the use of the term the Surrender Act, and on that I think he's got a perfectly reasonable case for talking about the Surrender Act because it surrenders this country's negotiating
But
capacity.
there were MPs in the chamber. There were MPs in the chamber who were virtually in tears, hearing the way he spoke and the way that debate was being handled, and his dismissal of fears about women's safety in particular.
But I don't.
Does he find it hard to read the mood of the room?
No,
do you think?
No, I don't think that's right because I know, having talked to him about it, that he cares a lot about the safety of MPs and the risks that we face. And by the way, Boris Johnson faces those sorts of threats as well. He doesn't really like to talk about them.
He's surrounded by police and protection officers, though, whereas some MPs
Well,
aren't.
he is now, but when he was a backbench MP, he's been, there's lots and lots of MPs who also get those threats on all sides of the House. And it's
so you've
something
talked to him about this safety issue since that debate, have you?
It's been discussed because everybody cares about getting it right.
And have you fulfilled your pledge to hold him to being a One Nation Conservative by saying to him, look, let's tone this down? Have you said that?
He is a One Nation Conservative. Look at the money he's putting into the NHS as case one of delivering on that commitment. That's why.
And he's a One Nation Conservative who's winning praise from the far right for the way he spoke in the Commons. Does that not unsettle you at all?
No, what I think we need to do to get
But does
through
that unsettle
this,
you?
What I think we need to do to get through this is to get Brexit done, and then we can try to bring the politics of this country together. Actually out there in the real world, in terms of jobs, in terms of the NHS, this country is doing well. But the politics at the moment is extremely noisy and aggressive. And I am bound to say, although this is no excuse for bad behaviour on one side, there is also bad behaviour elsewhere. I think everybody needs to make sure that they speak with respect.
Including the Prime Minister?
I think respecting...
Whose sister says he uses the Commons as a bully pulpit.
Well, a bully pulpit is a sort of political phrase for being able to explain to the nation what you're trying to do and persuade people to back your course of action.
Do you think he always chooses his words carefully enough?
Yes, I think he does. And I think that we've got to make sure that we get through this, and the best way to do that is to get Brexit done. I feel that incredibly strongly. I feel that politics is in a difficult moment in this country because of essentially the clash between representative democracy in Parliament and a referendum result. But my reading of it is that if you believe in democracy, you have to abide by the result of votes, even if, like me, you didn't vote for it. In the same way that I disagree with the Supreme Court judgment, but I abide by it. This is part of having respect for our institutions, which includes respect for democracy.
Okay.
And one of the reasons there's so much frustration in the public, especially amongst those who voted leave, but not entirely, because I'm frustrated with all of the noise around Brexit and not having delivered it yet, is that when you live in a democracy and your democracy votes for something, whether you like it or not, that is the answer.
So the Prime Minister's chief strategist, Dominic Cummings, says that it's not surprising that people are angry because they haven't had their referendum result respected. Do you feel that way as well?
I feel frustrated, absolutely. And I voted Remain.
You understand the anger?
Of course I understand the anger that some people have. In my case, I'd describe it more as an emotion of of frustration rather than anger. But by God, wouldn't it be better if we could get Brexit delivered, especially if we can get it delivered with a deal in a way that that also takes into account that the views of many of those who voted Remain, and therefore we can move this country forward. That's what we need to be doing. And then we can concentrate the whole of this interview on the future of the NHS and the technology we need to bring to bear in it, and how we can make sure we get enough people to become doctors and nurses, and of course education and security and all of the other questions. And we can have those sorts of debates. And of course it frustrates me. I want to get Brexit done.
This current crisis that you're in is very much of Dominic Cummings' making. You know, the prorogation of Parliament that was then declared unlawful, the failure to get Labour MPs to back a snap election. Is he a liability now, or do you still see him as some kind of Rasputin?
No, seriously. I mean, in government, there's always, you always need advisors, and because you need advice.
Is he a good advisor, though? I mean, is he a kind of Rasputin
you
figure?
You need advisors, but ultimately, it's the elected politicians who make the decisions.
So he needs to know his place?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the accountability rests with the elected politicians. If you've got a problem with the NHS, don't blame my advisors, blame me. I'm accountable for it as the Secretary of State. And when
Does he tell you what to do, though? Does he pull your strings?
He helps to drive forward the agenda on the NHS. He's been absolutely fantastic in helping to do that. But the reason that he's able to do that is because Boris loves the NHS and wants to deliver on the NHS agenda as well. So I think, of course, there's noise and talk around advisors. There has been, you mentioned Rasputin, there has been for hundreds of years. In fact, as old as politics is
he a Rasputin?
the role. No, is the role of advisors. But the accountability must fall to those who actually take the decisions. I think it was in the Thatcher era that someone coined the phrase "advisors advise, ministers decide," and that remains true. That's how government operates.
Are you and your colleagues a bit scared of him, though?
No.
You stand up to him, do you?
I have a total agreement with the Prime Minister on what we need to be doing in the NHS, expanding the services, making sure it's there for everyone, bringing new technology in, and making sure we've got enough people. I have that, because we're completely aligned on that, it makes it very straightforward, because the debates that we have is how do we best improve the NHS and drive that agenda forward. And the fruit of that you can see in what I came on to talk about, which is £200 million for making sure we can have earlier diagnosis of cancer. That's what it's all about. And, you know, I know that in Westminster and in some of the debates around it, there's a whole load of a debate around the process and the detail. But do you know what? That isn't what cuts through to my constituents in West Suffolk and around the country. What matters is, do we care about the things they care about? And yes, we do, because we care about delivering Brexit and improving public services and keeping the economy strong and all the things that go with that.
So to be clear,
can you do it? And yes, we can, because because the economy is running strongly, we can deliver on the domestic agenda, and the Prime Minister's determined to get Brexit done. All the rest is process. What matters is delivering for people.
And in that process, Dominic Cummings doesn't tell you what to do.
No.
You've said more than once that you want to get Brexit done.
Yes.
Just explain to me, the Prime Minister says he won't break the law, but that the UK will leave on October the 31st. How else can those two contradictory statements be true unless you're going to delve into some kind of, to put it in John Major's words, political chicanery?
Well, the best way is by agreeing a deal with the European Union. And
but
then,
failing that?
Well, that's what I think we should do.
Yeah, but failing that, that's not a given. Well, you know, you've said there's a chance.
We still need to get
Brexit
Brexit done, but the best way to get Brexit done is to get a deal with the EU and then have it agreed by the House of Commons and get out
OK, so let me put to you some of the suggestions as to how you're going to manage to make these two things happen.
You won't get very detailed answers because
fine, a simple yes or no will suffice. Using an order of council issued by ministers in the Privy Council to bypass the Ben Act, which required the Prime Minister to get an extension. Use EU law to overturn that. Send 2 letters to the EU, one requesting an extension and one cancelling the extension. Taking emergency powers. These are all things that have been suggested. Can you rule out all of those?
What I can rule in is that we should strain every sinew to get a deal and put it to the House of Commons and leave with a deal, because that's the best way to deliver.
I said a yes or no would suffice. Can you rule out all of those options?
Some of those options I had literally never heard of before this morning.
Well, I'm sure Dominic Cummings is poring over them.
Very good.
Just finally, you said that a no-deal Brexit was not viable. You also said that proroguing Parliament...
I didn't say it wasn't viable, actually.
You said it was not viable. You said that in the leadership campaign. You've forgotten.
No, I didn't. I said that I thought that it was not an option that was available because the Commons would stop it. And... well,
that was transcribed as not viable.
Well, it may have been transcribed, but I stick
not
to
available.
what I...
OK, you said it wasn't available. And then you said that proroguing Parliament would go against everything that our war heroes had fought and died for, and you said, I will not have it. Where is Matt Hancock's political soul?
My soul is absolutely determined to ensure that we deliver on people's priorities, that the Conservative Party stays in the centre ground, that we remain a broad church that attracts people, especially the next generation, because it's only with progressive, forward-looking, conservative values that this country can do the best it can. Now, throughout all of politics, there are always different choices that have to be made. In some of the examples that you mentioned, on prorogation, the proposal that was put to me was that we should suspend Parliament all the way through to the 1st of November. That's emphatically not what's been done. Indeed, Parliament has had the chance and taken the chance to legislate against the will of the government.
But you talk about a broad church,
yes.
And this is a church that has just chucked out 21 of its most experienced members.
Well, I want the Conservative Party to be attracting more and more people to it.
And bringing back those 21?
Well, I want us to be attractive. I want us to be broad-minded.
How's that going?
Well, there's a huge amount that we're doing on exactly that agenda, not least because of how we deliver on public services like the NHS. But that's the politics that I stand for, and because I think that's what's in the national interest.
And given that those are the politics that you stand for, did you think about leaving when your colleague Amber Rudd left the cabinet? No,
because it is in the national interest. It is in the national interest that we stick together to deliver Brexit and then get on to the positive things that I spend my day worrying about, like delivering for the NHS.
But if you'd stuck to your principles on prorogation, you should really have been one of those 21. It would have been 22 then.
Well, no, because the proposition that I was railing against was different to what happened. It was the proposition that we wouldn't have Parliament sitting at all and just go straight to a no-deal Brexit.
So you do have a bottom line.
And of course, but I've also got a very clear eye to what is in the national interest. And what is in the national interest is the Conservative Party delivering on Brexit, preferably with a deal, and then getting on to the domestic agenda that matters so much to people who aren't that interested in the detail of politics and the who said what to who, but care very much about their country being a great place to live.
And you're not scared to tell the Prime Minister that?
I'm perfectly prepared to stand up to the Prime Minister when necessary, but I don't need to, because we agree that we've got to deliver Brexit and we've got to deliver on the health service that I'm responsible for.
Matt Hancock, thank you very much.